This kitchen isn't yours, Joan. Crystal said it without turning around. She was wiping down the new quartz counter, the one I had paid for with the particular satisfaction of a woman polishing something she believed she owned. There were little white labels on the cabinet doors now. She had bought one of those label machines. Glasses, baking, Crystal's coffee, as if a stranger might wander in and need directions through my own kitchen. I was holding the skillet. Cast iron, black as a church shoe, seasoned by 40 years of Sunday mornings. Walter bought it for me the year we married, paid $2 for it at a hardware store that has been gone for 30 years. I had come in to make my eggs the way I had every morning of my adult life. I'd appreciate it, she went on, still scrubbing. If you'd asked before you used the stove, I just wiped it down, and the good pan stays for company. My hands didn't shake. Not yet. I set the skillet down on the cold burner, quietly. Then I crossed to the drawer beside the refrigerator, the junk drawer, they called it now, though it had been the bill drawer for 40 years before they arrived, and I took out the folder I kept there. Gas, electric, water, trash. The folder was thick, because I am a woman who keeps her papers. Every statement addressed to Joan Mercer, 14 Underwood Lane. Every single one paid from my account on the first of the month for 3 years running. I set the folder in her hands. Then these aren't yours either, I said. She looked down at the papers as if they might bite her. For just a moment, the scrubbing stopped. I watched her read the name at the top of the gas bill, my name, and I watched her decide not to understand it. I didn't wait for her to find the words. I turned and walked down the hall to the back bedroom, the small one, mine now, the one closest to the bathroom because of my knees, they said. I sat on the edge of the narrow bed, in the quiet, and folded my hands in my lap. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I have never been a woman who shouts. But somewhere between the stove and that little bed, in the length of a short hallway in a house I had paid off with my own 2 hands, something settled in me that had been loose and rattling for 3 years. I decided. I just didn't know yet, sitting there, how much it would cost me to make the deciding stick, or that the cruelest thing they would do was still ahead of me, waiting. Let me go back, so you understand. None of this began in that kitchen. The kitchen was only the day the truth finally said itself out loud. 3 years ago, my son called me on a Tuesday night, and his voice had that careful softness it gets when he wants something. I knew the softness. I had heard it when he was 9 and had broken a window, and when he was 19 and had wrecked the car, and I heard it again that Tuesday, the softness that comes just before the ask. "Mum, things are tight," he said. "Crystal lost her hours at the dental office. We're behind. We were thinking, just until we get back on our feet, maybe we could stay with you a while. It'd help us out a lot, and honestly, it'd be good for you too. You shouldn't be alone in that big house at your age. That last part, good for you too, not to be alone, that is how they always dress it up. They hand you a leash and call it a blanket, and because you are cold and you are lonely, you let them fasten it." I said yes before he had finished asking. Of course I did. Underwood Lane had 4 bedrooms and only me rattling around inside it since Walter passed. The house was paid off, free and clear. Walter and I burned the mortgage papers in the kitchen sink in 1998, lit them with a long match and laughed like children while the little fire curled and went out. I had my pension. I had my savings. I had the garden and the church and Ruth next door. But the rooms were quiet, and a quiet house can make a widow believe she needs rescuing. So when my son said he needed a place, what I heard was that I was needed. There is no sweeter word to a woman who has spent her life being useful. I mistook it for being wanted. I would spend 3 years learning the difference. They moved in that spring. Brian, my Brian, with the same cowlick he had at 6. Crystal, with her good handbags and her way of looking at a room and pricing it. And Hannah, 14 then, all elbows and headphones, who used to bake with me before she learned to be embarrassed by everyone over 50. And then, slowly, The way frost creeps across a window pane in the night, so you never catch it moving. The house stopped being mine. It started small. It always starts small. Crystal rearranged the living room to open it up. My reading chair, the green wingback. Walter and I bought the first Christmas we could afford a good one. The chair where I rocked Brian through every fever of his childhood went out to the garage, just for now. Then she repainted the hall a colour she called greige, over the soft yellow I had chosen 40 years before. Then she wanted to update the kitchen, my kitchen, and I paid for it. $18,000. New cabinets, the quartz, a faucet that cost more than my first car. She said it would raise the value of the house, our house. And I still believed, then, that the word our meant something passed between us. They took the big bedroom. "It's your knees, Joan," Crystal said, in that voice she used for things that were for my own good. "The back room is so much closer to the bathroom. We're only thinking of you." And so I carried 40 years of my marriage. Walter's reading glasses still in the nightstand, the quilt my mother made, the wedding photo, into the smallest room in my own home, and I told myself it was sensible. I told myself a great many things were sensible in those 3 years. That is how it is done. They do not take your house in one night. They take it one reasonable suggestion at a time, until one day you are eating off a tray in the back bedroom and calling it your choice. I paid the utilities. $612 some months in the deep of winter, when Crystal kept the thermostat at 74 and sighed if I touched it. I paid the property tax, $2,400 a year. I co-signed Brian's truck when his own credit wouldn't carry it, $31,000 with my name right under his. I covered Hannah's braces, $1,800, and gladly, because she was my granddaughter, and her crooked smile was worth 10 times that to me. And in return, I got a green chair in the garage and a daughter-in-law who put labels on my cabinets and told me the good pan was for company. I want to tell you it was the big things that wore me down, but it wasn't. It was the small, daily arithmetic of being made less. Crystal had a whole language of sighs, and I learned to read each one. There was a sigh for when I used the good towels, a sigh for when I nudged the thermostat up a single degree, a sigh for when I lingered too long in the front room while her friends came over for wine, until I learned to take my tea on the little hot plate in my room rather than feel myself become furniture in my own living room. There were sharper days, too, days I still turn over at night. The Christmas. After they moved in, I came into the garage looking for the box of ornaments Walter and I had collected over 40 years. A glass cardinal for every year. His idea. One bird a season. The box was gone. When I asked, Crystal said she'd donated some of the older things to make room, that they didn't really go with the new palette. 40 cardinals. 40 years. Gone to a thrift store because they did not match her tree. And last winter, this is the one that sits closest to the surface, Crystal hosted a dinner for 6. She brought out my mother's china, the Haviland, with the gold rim that I had carried through 3 moves and washed by hand for half a century. And she set the long table beautifully. Candles and all, 6 places. I counted them from the doorway. There was no 7th. She pressed a plate into my hands, warm, and said, with a smile so smooth you could have skated on it, "We just figured you'd be more comfortable eating in your room. Joan, you know how you tire." I took the plate. I ate alone, behind a closed door, off my own mother's china. In the house I had paid off with my own 2 hands, while my family laughed on the other side of the wall. I did not say anything. That is the part I am least proud of. For 3 years I did not say anything, because I had been raised to believe that a good mother gives and asks for nothing, and that endurance was the same as love. It is not. I know that now. Sometimes endurance is just the slow surrender of everything that was ever yours. But the thing that truly broke my heart in those 3 years was not the chair, or the cardinals, or the china. It was Hannah's quiet. She used to bake with me. When she was small, she would drag the step stool to the counter and crack the eggs with her whole fist, shells and all, and we would fish out the bits together and laugh. As she grew, she would still wander into the kitchen on a Sunday and lean against the counter and tell me about her week while I rolled out a pie crust. And then, somewhere in those 3 years, she stopped. She would see me at the stove and turn around in the doorway and go back to her room. Not cruelty. Just a girl learning the weather of a house and adjusting herself to survive it, the way children do. She had learned that the kitchen was contested ground now, and that her grandmother was on the losing side, and that it was safer to stay out of it. That was the loss that had no dollar figure. They could take my chair and my cabinets and my mother's china. But they were teaching my granddaughter, one quiet Sunday at a time, that I was someone to be embarrassed of, someone to be managed and stepped around. And I had let them, because I had not believed I had the right to stop it. The night Crystal told me the kitchen wasn't mine, all of that arithmetic finally added itself up. After she left my folder of bills on the hall table without a word, I heard her set it down, heard her door close. I made tea on the little hot plate in my room. I sat on the edge of the narrow bed, with the cup warming my hands, and I took out my notebook. The spiral one, the cheap kind, where I keep grocery lists and the thoughts I never say out loud. I turned to a clean page. I wrote, "This is my house. I have become a guest in my own kitchen." I looked at it a long while. Then I underlined it twice, pressing hard enough to score the page beneath. And then I did something I had not done in 3 years. I got up, opened the closet, and pulled down the fireproof box from the high shelf, the one Crystal had never thought to look in because she assumed an old woman keeps nothing worth hiding. Inside were the papers that matter. Walter's death certificate, our marriage license, the ink gone brown, and the deed. Walter and Joan Mercer. And then, after the worst year of my life, just Joan Mercer, free and clear, the real one. Not whatever story Crystal told herself when she picked out the greige and the quartz. I held it for a long time. It was heavier than paper has any right to be. I kept waiting for the anger to come, the way you wait for thunder after the flash. It didn't come. What came instead was clarity, cold and clean as well, water drawn up from deep. For 3 years I had confused being needed with being wanted. They had needed my house. They had needed my checkbook, and my co-signature and my silence. Not one of them in 3 years had wanted me at the table. The kitchen wasn't the question Crystal thought she was asking. The real question, the one underneath, was whether I would remember, before it was too late, that all of it was mine. The walls, the deed, the name on every bill. And the life I had nearly handed over one sensible surrender at a time. So I turned to a fresh page, and this time I did not write feelings. I wrote a list. The bank, the lawyer, the bills, the locks. And at the very bottom, set apart, one name, underlined, Hannah. I slept that night better than I had in months. Not the sleep of peace, the sleep of a decision finally made. In the morning I woke before the sun, the way I always have. 60 years of waking early to make a household run will do that to a body. I lay in the dark and listened to the house come alive without me. Brian's alarm through the wall, the shower, Crystal's voice already low and complaining about something, the coffee maker she had labelled. I listened to them move through my house as though it had been built for them. And for the first time in 3 years, that sound did not make me feel small. It made me feel certain. They moved like owners. They were going to learn they were guests. I dressed carefully. Pressed slacks, my good cream blouse, the navy cardigan with the real mother-of-pearl buttons that Walter always said made me look like a woman who didn't ask permission. When you are about to change the shape of your life, you wear something with buttons. You wear something that takes a little time to fasten, so your hands have a job while your nerve catches up. The bank opened at 9. I was the first one through the door. Diane, the branch manager, had known me for years. She had been the one to sit with me after Walter died, when I could not make my own hand, sign my own name on the forms, and she had waited, kind and unhurried, while I cried into a tissue and tried again. She took me back into the glass office now and folded her hands on the desk. What can I do for you, Mrs. Mercer? I'd like to see every automatic payment coming out of my accounts, I said. All of them. I want to look at the whole list. She turned the screen toward me. And there it was, lined up like a confession. The truck loan, $490 a month. Crystal's car insurance. Their family phone plan, 4 lines, 2 streaming services, a gym membership I had never once set foot inside, the utilities, and a standing transfer of $300 on the 15th of every month that Brian had set up 2 years ago and called groceries, though I had never seen a receipt and had been buying my own bread the whole time. Seeing it all in one column did something to me. It was one thing to know, in a vague and forgiving way, that I helped them. It was another to see the precise machinery of it, the way my own money flowed out automatically every month to fund a comfort I was not invited to share. Cancel the phone plan, I said. The streaming, the gym, the car insurance, the truck payment, the standing transfer. Keep the utilities on for now. I'm not going to sit in a cold house to make a point. Diane's eyebrows rose, but she did not ask. That is the mark of a good banker and a good woman. She began to type. Then she paused. There's a complication, she said. Your son is a joint holder on the checking and an authorized user on the savings. Some of these are linked to the joint account. To remove him and to stop the transfers cleanly, I have to put a security hold and run it through our verification because of the joint status. I can't just flip it all off from this chair. It's a protection, normally. It'll take about 24 hours, and you'll need to come back tomorrow with your ID to finish the removal in person. 24 hours. I felt it in my chest, a little cold drop. A whole day in which Brian, if he happened to log in, might see what I was doing before it was done. Will he be notified? I asked. Today? Not unless he's watching the account closely, she said. The hold is quiet, but I won't lie to you, it's a window. If you want, I can flag the account right now so that no one can add themselves back or move large sums while the hold is on. That part I can do this minute. Do that, I said. Flag it, and reset my passwords and my security questions today, the ones I can change today. She did. I gave her a new email address I had made that morning, one Brian did not know existed. Joan.Mercer, with a number on the end, and I felt almost giddy writing it down, like a girl passing a note. When she walked me to the door, she touched my arm. Most people, she said quietly, wait too long until there's nothing left to protect. I waited long enough, I said. But not too long. I'll be back tomorrow. Mr. Calloway's office was 2 streets over, above an insurance agency, up a narrow stair. It smelled of old paper and good coffee. I had never met him. Diane had written his name on a sticky note and pressed it into my palm. He was younger than I expected, perhaps 50, with kind eyes behind his glasses and a way of listening that made you feel you were the only appointment on his calendar all week. I put the deed on his desk. This house is mine, I said. Free and clear since 1998. My son and his wife and their daughter live in it. They pay nothing toward it. And yesterday my daughter-in-law stood in the kitchen. I paid $18,000 to renovate and told me it isn't mine. He picked up the deed, read it, set it down, and looked at me. It is very much yours, Mrs. Mercer. I want it protected, I said. I want it put somewhere they cannot reach. I want my granddaughter, Hannah, to be the only one who inherits it when the time comes. Not my son, not his wife. And I want to keep full control of it while I am alive and breathing. He took out a legal pad. A revocable living trust does exactly that. You place the house and your accounts into the trust. You serve as the trustee, you control everything. You can buy, sell, change your mind, undo it tomorrow. Hannah is named as the beneficiary. When you pass, the property goes straight to her. No probate, no court, and there is nothing your son or his wife can do to intercept it. We'll also want to revoke any power of attorney currently on file. My son holds my power of attorney, I said. From 2 years ago, when I fell on the ice and chipped my hip. He never once used it on my behalf. He used it to add himself to my savings. We'll revoke it today, he said, and put a new one in place, naming someone you actually trust. We worked for an hour. I named Hannah as the eventual decision-maker for my health, and Ruth next door for the years between, in case my mind ever did go before Hannah was ready. We drew up a statement of intent in my own words, explaining why I was doing what I was doing, so there could be no confusion later about whether I had understood myself. Then Mr. Calloway set down his pen and looked at me with a more careful expression. Mrs. Mercer, I have to raise something, and I don't want you to take it as an insult, because it is the opposite. When a person makes changes like these, cutting out an adult child, moving everything to a grandchild, doing it all at once after a falling out, the family that's been cut out will sometimes try to fight it. And the most common way they fight it is to claim that the person wasn't of sound mind, that they were confused, that someone manipulated them. The cold drop returned, lower this time. I am not confused, I said. I can see that, he said gently. You're one of the sharpest clients I've had across this desk in a long while. But seeing it and proving it in front of a judge are two different things, and I would rather we be ready than sorry. I'd like to slow down just slightly, not stop. Slow down. The trust documents will take a few days to draft properly. When we sign, I want it done in front of 2 independent witnesses, and I'd like to record it on video, you stating in your own words what you're doing and why. And I'd strongly recommend a capacity evaluation, a letter from a geriatric physician attesting that you are fully competent. It's an afternoon's appointment. With that letter in the file, any claim that you didn't know what you were doing falls apart before it starts. A few days. Not today. Not the clean, instant cut I had wanted. I will be honest with you, because I have promised myself I am done pretending. I did not like it. I had walked in wanting it finished, sealed, beyond reach by sundown. The lawyer was telling me it would take a week, and that I would have to sit in a doctor's office and prove I was not a fool in order to keep what had always been mine. All right, I said, because I am not a stupid woman, and a wise plan you dislike is still wiser than a satisfying one that fails. Draft it properly. Get me the doctor's name. I'll do the evaluation. And the eviction? He asked. If you want them out, I can prepare a notice. They have no lease, no ownership, no legal claim in this state they're occupants at your permission. You give them written notice, a reasonable period to find another place, or the option to sign a real lease and pay fair market rent. The choice is entirely yours. I thought of Crystal paying me rent. The image was so absurd it almost made me smile. Draft the notice, I said. 60 days. No lease. I want my house back. But hold it until the trust is signed and the doctor's letter is in your hand. I don't want to wave the flag before my armor's on. He nodded slowly, and something like respect crossed his face. That's exactly right, he said. You'd make a fair lawyer, Mrs. Mercer. I made a fair mother, I said. Look where it got me. And then, because the bitterness tasted wrong in my mouth, there's one more thing. The money I've been spending on them every month, the phone, the insurance, the truck, all of it. Once it stops, I don't want it sitting in my account growing fat. There's a women's shelter out on Route 9, the one past the feed store. Set up a monthly gift, the same amount sent there, starting the 1st of the month. He wrote it down. May I ask why the shelter, specifically? I looked out his window at the grey street. Because I stayed in a house I owned and let myself be made homeless inside it for 3 years, I said. The least I can do is help a woman who had the sense to walk out the door. I drove home with the cold drop in my chest still there, smaller now, but present. The plan was good. The plan was right. But it was not finished, and the unfinished days stretched ahead of me like thin ice. I had set everything in motion, and now I had to live in the same house as the people I was quietly moving against, smiling over the dinner I ate in the back room. For a week, hoping none of them looked too closely, I came home to a quiet house. Brian was at work. Crystal's car was gone off, spending money she did not yet know was about to stop. and Hannah was sitting on the back steps, knees pulled up to her chin, a textbook open and ignored on the concrete beside her. Grandma, she said it carefully, the way you say a word in a language you're not sure you still speak. Hi, baby. I lowered myself down beside her, slow, my knees announcing every inch of the descent. We sat and looked at the yard a while without talking. Walter's apple tree at the back fence, crooked now, time having pulled it sideways, still throwing out blossoms every spring as if it had never once been told it was old. Mom was really upset last night, Hannah said finally. About the bills. She kept saying you were trying to make some kind of point. She was on the phone about it for an hour. I was making a point, I said. Just not the one she thinks. Hannah pulled at a loose thread on her sleeve, winding it around her finger until the tip went white. I'm sorry, she said suddenly, in a rush, like the words had been waiting behind her teeth. I stopped coming in the kitchen when you were in there. I started acting like Mom acts about you. And I knew it was wrong. I knew it the whole time, and I did it anyway, because it was easier than getting in the middle. I'm really sorry, Grandma. I put my hand over hers and stilled the winding thread. You were a child learning the weather of a difficult house, I said. That is not your fault. A child shouldn't have to choose a side at the dinner table. But you're nearly grown now, Hannah. And being nearly grown means you get to decide, on purpose, what kind of weather you want to be in this world. Whether you'll be the storm or the porch light. She was quiet, then very low. I don't want to turn into her. There it was, the fear under the fear. I had wondered if she felt it. You won't, I said, because you just said it out loud. She never could. That's the whole difference, baby. The people who worry they might be unkind are the ones who stay kind. It's the ones who can't imagine they're ever wrong that you have to watch. She leaned her head on my shoulder, the way she used to before she got tall, before the headphones, before the house went cold. We sat like that for a while, two women, 30 years apart on a concrete step, and the apple tree dropped a few late blossoms on the grass. Will you teach me the cornbread? She asked. The cast iron one, the real one, I keep meaning to ask. I want to learn it before. She stopped, the way she had on the steps that first day. Before everything changes, I can feel it changing. I don't know how, but I can feel it. More than you know, I said. Come on. So we went inside, into the kitchen, my kitchen, and I lit the oven without asking a single living soul for permission. I peeled the little white labels off the cabinet doors as we went, glasses and baking and Crystal's coffee, and dropped them in the trash one by one. And Hannah watched me do it and didn't say a word, but the corner of her mouth turned up. I showed her how to set the skillet in the oven empty, to let it get screaming hot before the batter ever touches it, because that is the secret nobody tells you. The crust comes from the heat of the iron and not from the recipe. I showed her how to flick a drop of water on it to test, how the drop should dance and skitter and vanish in a breath, how to pour the batter in and hear it hiss and know from the sound alone that you've done it right. Her hands were sure on the bowl, surer than mine are now, steady where mine have started to tremble. When it came out gold, crackling, the edges lacy and crisp. We ate it standing up at the counter Crystal had told me wasn't mine. Butter melting into the steam of it. And it was the best thing I had tasted in 3 years. Maybe not because of the cornbread, because of the company, and the lit oven, and the labels in the trash. This is yours, you know, I told her, watching her eat. Someday, the house, this skillet, all of it, I've seen to it. Her eyes went wide over the cornbread. Mum said the house would go to her and Dad. She said it like it was already decided. She told her sister on the phone. I know what your mother says, I said gently. I'm telling you what's true. There's a difference between what a person announces and what a person owns. Your mother announces a great deal. Hannah set down her piece. Grandma, if Mum finds out about the bills, about whatever you're doing, she's going to be so angry. She's going to say things. She's already saying things. Let her, I said. Words are free. It's the paperwork that costs, and I'm the one holding the pen. I squeezed her shoulder. Whatever happens in this house in the next few weeks, Hannah, I need you to remember one thing for me. No matter what your mother says about my mind, about me being confused, about someone tricking me, you were here today. You watched me read a recipe and run an oven and peel labels off a cabinet. You know exactly how clear I am. Hold on to that. You might need it. She looked at me a long moment, too young to fully understand what I was arming her with, old enough to take it seriously. I'll remember, she said. I am glad I told her. Because 4 days later, the war I had started came home, and it came in a shape I had not seen coming. The trust documents weren't ready yet. The doctor's appointment was set for the following Monday. I was in the unarmored week, the thin ice week, just as I'd feared. And the bank's 24-hour hold had lifted. I had gone back, signed, and the payments had stopped. That is what tripped the wire. Crystal's car insurance lapsed, and she got a notice. The phones went dead in the middle of one of her calls. The streaming would not load for Hannah's evening shows. And Brian, checking the account on a Thursday night, found himself removed from the savings he had quietly treated as his own. He came to my door first, holding his phone like it had betrayed him. Mom. His voice was thin. What is going on? I'm locked out of the account. The truck payment bounced. Crystal's insurance, the phones. I stopped paying for your life, I said, setting down my book. That's all that's happened. You're a grown man with a job. Your life is yours to pay for now. His face worked through several things at once. Did somebody talk you into this? Mum, you don't. Don't, I said. Don't tell me I don't understand my own bank account. I understand it better than you do. I've understood it for 40 years. That was when Crystal arrived in the doorway behind him, and I saw at once that she was not surprised the way Brian was surprised. She had had 4 days to think, and a clever woman with 4 days is dangerous. Her arms were crossed, and her voice, when it came, was not loud. It was calm. That was worse. Joan, she said, I think you should sit down. I'm worried about you. I'm sitting, I said. You're not yourself, she said, with such tender concern that for a moment even I almost believed her. Cancelling everything overnight, locking Brian out, talking to lawyers behind our backs. This isn't the Joan we know, I think. She glanced at Brian, building it in front of him. I think someone has gotten to you. That neighbour, maybe. Or maybe it's just Joan, you're 74. These things happen. The confusion, the paranoia. And if you're not able to make these kinds of decisions safely anymore, then it falls to us, as your family, to step in and protect you. From others, and from yourself. And there it was, the cruelest blade in the drawer, and she drew it without raising her voice. She was not going to argue that I was wrong. She was going to argue that I was gone. That my mind had failed. That my judgment could not be trusted. That the kindest thing, the loving thing, would be for her and Brian to take the decisions out of my unreliable old hands. A conservatorship, they call it. A guardianship. A judge signs a paper and a grown woman becomes a child again, and someone else holds her checkbook and her front door key, and decides what she may and may not do, all of it dressed up as protection. I'm not confused, Crystal, I said, and I kept my voice level, but I felt the ice thin beneath me. That's exactly what someone who's confused would say, she answered, almost kindly. We'll get you looked at. We'll make sure you're taken care of. She uncrossed her arms. I already spoke to someone today, actually, about a welfare check, just to be safe, because we love you. I did not sleep that night. I want to be honest with you about that, because I think the women listening to this have been told too many tidy stories where the strong old woman never once doubts herself. I doubted. I lay in the narrow bed in the small back room, and I felt 74 for the first time in my life. Not in my knees, in my chest, in my nerve. Crystal had reached past everything I owned and put her hand on the one thing I had never thought to protect. The simple fact of being believed. Of being a competent adult in the eyes of the world. I had armoured the house. I had armoured the money. I had not armoured my own mind, because it had never occurred to me that anyone would dare attack it. And the terrible thing, the thing that kept me staring at the ceiling crack until the grey came up in the window, was the small voice that asked, "What if she's a little bit right? What if a judge looks at a woman my age who cut out her son and gave everything to a teenager and sees not clarity, but a sick old woman led astray?" I knew my own mind, but I had just spent 3 years letting them tell me what was sensible, and I had believed it. How sure could I be that I'd know if my own judgment slipped? That is the poison of it. The accusation doesn't have to be true. It only has to make you doubt the one witness you have yourself. By the time the sun came up, I had cried. A little, not the timed and tidy kind, just a few hot tears that came on their own while I sat at the edge of the bed, and I let them. And then I was done with them. Because underneath the doubt, when I went looking, my mind was right where I had left it. Sharp, clear, mine. I knew exactly what day it was, exactly what I had signed, and why, exactly whose name was on the gas bill. The fear had been real. But the fear was a liar. And I had been listening to liars for 3 years, and I was finished. I picked up the phone, and I called Mr. Calloway before his office was even open, and left a message, and he called me back at 9:03. "She's threatening a competency claim," I told him. "A welfare check. A conservatorship, I think. She said it to my son's face that I'm too old to manage myself and they need to step in." There was a short silence on the line, and when he spoke, I heard something I hadn't expected. Not alarm, satisfaction. "Mrs. Mercer," he said. "She just made the single worst move available to her, and she made it before your armor was on. Now listen to me carefully, because we're going to turn the knife around. Can you come in this afternoon? Bring your neighbor Ruth, was it? As a witness. I'm moving the capacity evaluation up. I have a colleague, a geriatrician, who can see you tomorrow morning. And if a welfare check comes from the county, you do not hide from it, and you do not get flustered. You invite them in. You offer them coffee. You let them see exactly how clear you are. The thing she thinks is her weapon is about to become the centerpiece of your file. I went in that afternoon. Ruth came with me, indignant on my behalf, the whole drive, calling Crystal words I will not repeat in a story meant for kind ears. We signed nothing final yet, but Mr. Calloway documented everything, the threat, the date, my account of it, Ruth's account of having known me for 20 years and watched me balance my own checkbook last week. He recorded me on video, calm and plain, stating my name, the date, the current president, the value of my house, the precise reasons I was leaving, everything to Hannah and nothing to Brian. I did not stumble once. The next morning I sat with the geriatrician, a brisk woman named Dr. Okafor, who asked me to count backward from 100 by sevens, to draw a clock, to remember 3 words, and recall them 10 minutes later. Apple, table, penny. I have not forgotten them yet, and to explain my financial decisions in my own words. At the end, she took off her glasses and said, "Mrs. Mercer, you are one of the most cognitively intact patients I've seen this month, and I see a lot of patience. I'll have the letter to your attorney by end of day." She paused. "Whoever suggested you might be incompetent, were they perhaps standing to gain from that being true?" "Everything," I said. "They were standing to gain everything." She nodded slowly. The way a woman nods when she has seen a thing many times and is tired of seeing it. "Then your letter will be very thorough," she said. The welfare check came 2 days later. A county social worker named Mr. Ibarra with a clipboard and tired, decent eyes. I invited him in. I made him coffee in my own kitchen, in the good pan I poured the milk from, and we sat at my own table. He had come, he said, on a report that I was confused and possibly being financially exploited by a person who had gotten access to my accounts. "That report is half right," I said. "There is financial exploitation in this house. But I'm not the one confused, and they're not the ones being exploited." And I laid it out for him, plainly, with the folder of bills, the deed, the cancelled co-signature, the lawyer's card, The doctor's appointment from the day before. I watched his eyebrows climb. I watched him understand, the way Diane had understood, the way Dr. Okafor had understood that he was sitting across from a woman whose only confusion had been believing, for 3 years too long, that she owed her silence to people who had never once paid her back in kind. He closed his clipboard. "Mrs. Mercer," he said, "I came here today because someone wanted me to find a vulnerable adult. I did find one." He looked around my reclaimed kitchen. "But I think she's been the most clear-eyed person in this house the whole time. I'll be noting that the report appears to have been made in bad faith. That goes in the file too." When he left, I stood in the kitchen a long while with my cold coffee. The thing Crystal had built to bury me had become, line by line, document by document, the foundation under my feet. The doctor's letter, the social worker's note, the video, Ruth's statement. Her cruelest move had not weakened my hand. It had made it unbreakable. The trust was signed that Friday in Mr. Calloway's office, in front of 2 witnesses, on video, with Dr. Okafor's letter already in the file. The house and every account into Hannah's name untouchable. The power of attorney revoked and reassigned. The eviction notice drafted and ready. I had my armor on now. I served the notice myself. I did not have a sheriff do it, though Mr. Calloway offered. I walked into the living room on a Saturday morning, where Brian sat with his coffee and Crystal scrolled her phone, and I set the envelope on the coffee table between them. 60 days, I said. The house is in a trust now. You can't reach it, and you can't reach me. You're welcome to find an apartment, or you're welcome to sign a lease and pay me fair market rent, like any other tenant. But the free years are over, and so is the part where anyone in this house decides whether I'm of sound mind. I set a copy of Dr. Okafor's letter on top of the envelope. "That's from a doctor. Read it carefully, Crystal. You'll find I'm sharper than you hoped." Crystal stood up fast, the calm gone now, the concern burned off to show what was underneath. "You're putting your own son out on the street," she said. "Your own granddaughter, over a kitchen, after everything we did for you, living here taking care of you. I had been waiting 3 years for that sentence. We took care of you." I walked to the hall table, opened the drawer, and lifted out the folder again. The bills. Joan Mercer. Every single page. I held it out to her. The same gesture, the same proof, closing the circle that had opened in that kitchen 2 weeks before. "You said this kitchen wasn't mine," I said. "Read the name on the gas bill. Read who kept your lights on every winter you've lived here. Read who paid the tax, who co-signed the truck you're so afraid of losing, who bought the braces on your daughter's teeth." My voice did not rise. It did not need to. "You did not take care of me, Crystal. You moved me to the smallest room in my own house and ate off my mother's china while I had supper alone behind a door. You gave away 40 years of my Christmas ornaments because they didn't match your tree. And when I finally remembered it was my house, you tried to tell a judge I'd lost my mind. You weren't taking care of me. I was carrying you, all 3 of you, on my back, in my house, with my money. There is a difference. And I am done pretending I don't know what it is." She did not take the folder this time. Her hand did not even rise. Her mouth opened and shut. "You'll regret this," she said finally, because it was the only card left in a hand I had emptied. "No," I said. "I regret the 3 years before it. This part, I'll sleep just fine." They did not sign the lease. Of course they didn't. The night before they left, Brian knocked on my door. Just him. He stood in the hallway a long time before he found his voice. And when he did, he looked exactly like the boy who got himself stuck in the apple tree at 6 years old. Too high to climb down, waiting up there in the dark for me to fetch the ladder. "I keep thinking you'll change your mind," he said. "I won't. Mom." His voice cracked on the word. "We're still family." I looked at my son. Truly looked at him. The way I had not let myself do in 3 years, because looking hurt too much. And I felt no hatred. I want you to understand that. There was no triumph in it. No spite. Only a great and final tiredness that had at last found the bottom of itself. "You were my family," I said. "I fed you. I co-signed for you. I gave you my home and my kitchen and the small room at the back and my silence for 3 years. And not one time did anyone in this house lay a place at the table for me. You let your wife try to have me declared a madwoman to keep my house, Brian, and you stood in the doorway and you let her. You didn't say a word. That's the part I'll carry. His eyes filled. I should have stopped her. Yes, I said. You should have, but you didn't, and a mother can forgive a great deal. But she cannot unknow what she has finally let herself see. I reached out and, just once, touched his cheek, the way I had when he was small and feverish. I was always your family. You stopped being mine a long time ago. You only noticed the day the money stopped. I hope, someday, you grow into a man I would want at my table. The door isn't locked against you, but I am finished holding it open and calling that love. He nodded. He could not speak. He went. I closed the door. I did not slam it. I shut it slowly. The way you close a book you have finally finished, and it met the frame with a small, soft sound. And that sound was the end of a sentence I had been trying to finish for 3 years. I did not cry then. I had done my crying in the dark, on the worst night, when I doubted myself. I had spent it already, and I did not have any left for him. Instead, I went into my kitchen, and I took down a single cup, and I made myself tea on the real stove, and I drank it, standing at the window, watching the streetlight come on. And I let myself grieve the boy from the apple tree, who was real once, and who was gone now, in a way no eviction notice could measure. That grief I kept. The boy deserved to be mourned, even if the man did not deserve the house. They left on a grey Saturday morning, with a rented truck and a great deal of noise, and Crystal directing it all like a foreman. Hannah hugged me hard on the porch, longer than her mother liked, and whispered that she would call. And she has every Tuesday since, without fail, and some Sundays too. When she takes the bus across town to bake with me, the cast-iron cornbread, her hands surer than mine. When the truck finally turned the corner and was gone, the house let out a breath. I felt it move through the walls, through the floorboards, up through my feet. A house knows who it belongs to. It had been waiting for me to remember. I started in the kitchen, where it had all begun. I carried the green wingback chair in from the garage, Walter's chair, my chair, and set it back in the front room in the spot where the morning light falls across the floor, and I sat in it for a while, just to feel it hold me. I took down Crystal's greige curtains and hung the soft yellow ones I had sewn before Brian was even born, and the light through them turned the whole room the colour of butter again. And I took the skillet, my skillet, Walter's $2 skillet, and I scrubbed 3 years of someone else's careless cooking out of it, and I reseasoned it the way he taught me on our honeymoon, a film of oil, a low oven, an hour, patience until it shone black and ready, the way a thing shines when it remembers what it's for. Ruth came over that first evening with a pot of lentil soup and the good sense not to ask a single question. We sat at my own table, in my own kitchen, under my own yellow light, and split a pan of fresh cornbread between us. She said the crust made her bad knee hum. I laughed, a real laugh, from somewhere I'd thought had closed up for good. The shelter out on Route 9 received its first gift that month, the exact sum that used to keep Crystal's car insured, and 4 phone lines ringing, and a truck I co-signed rolling down the road. I drove it over myself rather than mail it. The director was a tired woman with kind, capable hands, and she asked me what name she should write down for the donation. Just say it came from a woman who got her kitchen back, I told her. She'll know who she is, if she ever needs to. That night, looking through the cupboard for my old recipe box to copy the cornbread out for Hannah, I found, tucked behind it, an envelope I had forgotten I owned. Walter's handwriting on the front, my name, Joni, the way only he ever spelled it. He had written it before his surgery, the heart surgery he did not wake up from, and I had been too broken in those first black weeks to read it the way it deserved, and then I had put it somewhere safe and let the years close over it. I sat down in the green chair and opened it. Joni, it said. If I go first, and I expect I might. The doctors have that look, don't you let anybody make you small in your own house. We built this place board by board, the two of us, and your name is on every inch of it. The kitchen is yours, the table is yours. So are you, Joni. I've watched you give yourself away to people your whole life and call it love. This once, save some back for the woman I married. Don't you ever set your own place at the back of the room? I sat a long time in the butter-coloured light with that letter in my lap. He had worried about exactly this. Not the particulars, he could not have known Crystal, or the labels on the cabinets, or the doctor's office where I'd had to prove I still owned my own mind. But he had known the shape of me. He had known how I would give, and give, and give, until I was standing on nothing, calling the emptiness love, and so dying with the last of his strength. He had reached forward across all these years to put one steadying hand under my arm. Don't you ever set your own place at the back of the room? I almost did, Walt. I told the empty, listening house. I almost set it at the back for good. But I moved it, in the end. I moved it back to the head of the table where it belongs. The skillet was warm on the stove. The yellow light was mine. The table was set for one, and I want to tell you plainly, that was not loneliness. A table set for one, by a woman who chose it, in a kitchen she fought to keep, is one of the least lonely things in this world. It was the sound of a house that belonged, at last and entirely, to the woman who had paid for every board and every bill and every quiet inch of it. If you are listening to this, and you have ever been made to feel like a guest in a life you built in a kitchen you scrubbed, a home you paid for, a family you carried on your back until your spine curved under the weight of them, then I need you to hear me, because I learned it the hard way, and I would spare you that. The name on the bill is the name that matters, not the loudest voice in the room, not the one who carried your chair to the garage and told you it was for your own good, not the one who labels your own cabinets in your own house. And when they cannot win by being right, some of them will try to win by saying, "You've lost your mind." Do not let that be the thing that stops you. Do not let an accusation become a verdict. Get the letter, get the witness. Let them look as closely as they like. A clear mind has nothing to fear from being examined, and everything to gain from being on the record. You are allowed to stop paying for people who will not set you a place. You are allowed to take back the table you bought and built. You do not need anyone's permission, and you do not have to raise your voice even once to do it. Because sometimes dignity does not arrive with shouting. Sometimes it arrives quietly in a folder of utility bills, handed gently back to the person who forgot whose name was printed on every single page, in a doctor's plain letter, in a key that finally turns only for you. If this story found you today, share it. Pass it along to a woman who needs reminding that her kitchen, and her mind, and her whole one life were always hers. The light is still on in my kitchen tonight, and this time it is on for me.